Subcommittee will be in order without objection. The chair will be authorized to declare recesses of the subcommittee during votes in the House. Because we're supposed to have votes in about 30 minutes, the chair will forego opening statement. His opening statement will ask the other members not to make opening statements so we can get to the witnesses, because Representative Jackson Lee has got a hard departure time at 11:30, and I think after the first votes we won't be able to get back until then.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentlewoman from Texas.
This is a very important hearing. I do have an engagement that I will yield a couple of minutes for the importance of this hearing, and I thank you so very much for your courtesies. I would like to have a very brief moment to make a brief statement about this hearing and put the rest of my statement into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank you for this stated commitment to the criminal justice reform and the idea of moving hearings forward and legislation forward. I welcome this distinguished panel, in particular the thoughts the role that rapid DNA can play in aiding sexual assault victims and individuals who've been wrongly convicted. I've worked on this issue and, in fact, have legislation that we hope will be modified enough to join this particular bill. Finally, my great state of Texas recognized this massive problem and passed legislation requiring law enforcement agencies to test all untested rape kits in their storage facilities. I worked with the City of Houston and encouraged the City of Houston, one, to invest in a new DNA lab and as well be concerned about these issues. I'd like to ask unanimous consent for the rest of the statement to be put into the record. Mr. Chairman, I would like to—
Without objection.
I thank you. In the second that I have, I would like to indicate that we all have been overwhelmed by the horrific tragedy of persons being killed in their home or their house of worship. I was moved to tears late last evening and continue to be, as I'm well aware, of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. We pray for their families, and at this time we pray for the solution, and we pray for the fact that we all can live in this great nation in peace and recognition of each other's human dignity. I'm going to take a moment and would ask for a moment of silence for those who are lost in South Carolina.
Without objection.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a very distinguished panel today, and I'll begin by swearing in our witnesses before introducing them. If you would, please all rise. I solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Let the record show that all of the witnesses answered in the affirmative. I'm going to be giving an abbreviated introduction of each of the witnesses, and then you'll be recognized for 5 minutes. Amy Hess is the Executive Assistant Director of Science and Technology at the FBI. Ms. Jody Wolf is the Assistant Crime Laboratory Administrator for the Phoenix Police Department Crime Laboratory. And Ms. Natasha Alenko is the founder of Natasha's Justice Project, which is a nonprofit whose mission is to eliminate the nation's rape kit backlog crisis. Without objection, your written testimony will be put in the record, and each of you will be recognized for 5 minutes, and I think you know what the green, yellow, and particularly the red light mean. Ms. Hess.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Sensenbrenner, Ranking Member Jackson Lee, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update today on our efforts relating to rapid DNA and for your continued support of the men and women of the FBI. Over the last 3 decades, we've been developing our Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS program, in order to better assist federal, state, local, and international forensic laboratories. As new DNA technologies have emerged, we have been vigilant in demanding they provide the quality and integrity expected of a nationwide law enforcement database and must be implemented pursuant to the FBI's quality assurance standards in accordance with the Federal DNA Identification Act of 1994. One of the underlying concepts of CODIS was to create a database of the DNA profiles of convicted offenders and use it to identify suspects for crimes in which there are no suspects. But this tool, which was initially expected to benefit the investigation of sexual assault cases, has proven to have broader applications. States observed this firsthand and sought to expand coverage of their databases beyond convicted sexual offenders, first to individuals convicted of other violent felonies, then to all felony offenders, and now to persons arrested for sexual offenses, or in many states, persons arrested for any felony offense. The FBI laboratory works closely with the DNA and CODIS communities as well as other stakeholders such as laboratory accrediting bodies, law enforcement, defense attorneys, and prosecutors to evaluate new technologies and procedures. Any efforts to enhance CODIS involve significant consultation with the affected stakeholders, software development, testing, evaluation, implementation planning, and user training. Today, CODIS is installed in approximately 200 forensic DNA laboratories nationwide. The FBI provides the CODIS software to laboratories which are accredited, which follow the FBI's quality assurance standards, that are audited annually, and that agree to comply with the Federal DNA Act for participation in the National DNA Index System, or INDES. To date, CODIS has generated over 285,000 investigative leads for law enforcement. All 50 states, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Army's Criminal Investigation Laboratory, and the FBI contribute DNA records to and participate in INDES, which contains almost 14 million offender or arrestee DNA records and over 630,000 forensic or crime scene DNA records. The FBI uses the term rapid DNA analysis or technology to describe the fully automated, hands-free process of developing a CODIS core short tandem repeat or STR profile from a reference sample buccal swab. The process consists of automated extraction, amplification, separation, detection, and allele calling without human intervention. Our objective is to generate a CODIS-compatible DNA profile and to search these profiles within 2 hours against unsolved crime profiles while an arrestee is in police custody. Rapid DNA technology has been designed for use within and outside the forensic DNA laboratory, as the instruments are self-contained machines which require no human intervention beyond the loading of the DNA samples and analysis cartridges. With legislative authority, the FBI envisions rapid DNA integration occurring in 2 phases. Phase 1 involves the booking station CODIS enrollment and searching of rapid DNA profiles, which will eliminate the weeks to months it currently takes for arrestee samples to be mailed, received, inventoried, and analyzed for registration in the CODIS system. Phase 2 is the hit notification to booking stations and investigative agencies, which is expected to conserve valuable investigative resources and identify perpetrators before they are released back into their communities at the completion of the normal booking process. Since 2008, we've partnered with the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security in the development of point-of-collection DNA analysis for the production of CODIS DNA profiles within a 2-hour period. In addition, the Scientific Working Group on DNA Analysis Methods impaneled a rapid DNA committee to evaluate whether additional quality measures were needed for records produced by rapid DNA instruments. Based on their recommendations, the FBI issued an addendum to our quality assurance standards to provide a foundation for the implementation of rapid DNA within accredited forensic DNA laboratories. The Federal DNA Act currently requires that DNA records maintained at INDES be generated by accredited laboratories in compliance with the FBI's quality assurance standards. But rapid DNA technology has been designed for use by law enforcement agencies at the point of booking. Thus, statutory authorization for the use of FBI-approved rapid DNA instruments by criminal justice agencies would be needed before the DNA records generated at police booking stations can be searched at INDES. In addition to the legislative validation, testing, evaluation, standards, and software issues, we must address issues relating to INDES approval and certification of the instruments, as well as training of law enforcement personnel. These issues must be resolved prior to implementation so this new technology is used in a manner which maintains the quality, integrity, and sterling reputation of our database. In conclusion, CODIS has demonstrated its value as an investigative tool for 25 years, and we are committed to maintaining its effectiveness. The FBI is also committed to identifying new technologies which could enhance the CODIS program, and we are pursuing rapid DNA technology because we believe the efficiencies obtained from the real-time analysis of an arrestee's DNA sample has tremendous potential to improve public safety and focus law enforcement investigative resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wolf?
Good morning, Chairman Sensenbrenner, Ranking Member Jackson Lee, and members of the committee. My name is Jody Wolf, and I'm the president of the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors. On behalf of the 600 laboratory directors, represented by ASCLD, and over 15,000 crime laboratory practitioners represented by the Consortium of Forensic Science Organizations, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to discuss the topic of rapid DNA technology and provide comments on House Resolution 320, the Rapid DNA Act of 2015. The introduction of rapid DNA technology has been an exciting one for the forensic science community. Several of our members helped with the initial technology development, and several more are currently participating in pilot programs to evaluate how best to implement this novel technology within the criminal justice system.
Mr. Chair, could you ask the witness just to speak a little closer to the microphone, please? Thank you.
the introduction of rapid DNA technology has been an exciting one for the forensic science community. Several of our members helped with the initial technology development, and several more are currently participating in pilot programs to evaluate how best to implement this novel technology. Rapid DNA is designed to deliver a DNA profile from samples such as known reference standards within a few hours and is most commonly associated with the placement in law enforcement booking stations for the analysis of arrestee samples and entry into CODIS. The potential of this technology is promising, and both ASCLD and CFSO support the continued development of this novel application. As I stated earlier, several of our members are currently participating in pilot programs and validation studies to develop best practices for the widespread deployment of these systems. Overviews of these programs and studies are provided in the written testimony offered to this committee. As policymakers anticipate the implementation of this technology, it is critical the following issues are considered. First, rigorous validations performed by crime laboratory scientists and researchers are critical to demonstrating the efficacy of this technology and not marketing materials. Currently, these devices are best suited for use with single-source, high-quantity biological samples such as reference standards of blood or saliva from known individuals, thus limiting its usefulness for complex crime scene samples of more than one person. These instruments also currently can't analyze trace amounts of DNA. Consequently, these instruments are not designed for the routine testing of evidence types found in rape kits and will not help with the reduction of rape kit backlogs. Secondly, this technology must be compliant with current industry standards and guidelines as provided by the FBI and the Scientific Working Group on DNA Analysis Methods, thus ensuring its operability with the CODIS database. SWGDM and the FBI Quality Assurance Standards for forensic DNA testing laboratories have provided best practices and standards for almost 20 years. ASCLD looks to these groups for guidance with rapid DNA technologies, and we encourage vendors to seek full compliance with these standards or any new standards or guidelines developed by this group. Third, ASCLD recommends that a careful cost-benefit analysis be performed prior to its widespread implementation. The purchase price for most rapid DNA devices currently exceed $200,000, and the estimated per-sample cost is $250. By comparison, Foresight, a national study of crime laboratory operational costs led by the West Virginia University, reported the median cost is less than $85 per sample using traditional laboratory methods for the DNA analysis of a database or known reference standard. Clearly, the current cost of traditional DNA databasing is significantly less than using the rapid DNA technology. As a result, funding levels for existing grant programs aimed at increasing analytical capacity for crime laboratories and reducing backlogs will need to be increased to allow crime laboratories and their stakeholders the opportunity to best meet the needs of their jurisdictions for DNA analysis. Finally, and perhaps most importantly for crime laboratories and practitioners, is the technology transfer from the vendors to operational facilities. While the FBI is currently working on supporting the IT infrastructure necessary for its implementation and booking stations, it is important that other measures are also taken to validate this technology in the community. ASCLD has been at the forefront of these activities and presented 3 rapid DNA webinars addressing these topics during the past year, included rapid DNA presentations during its annual symposiums, and has charged its forensic research committee with developing guidance and best practices for its membership. ASCLD and CFSO support rapid DNA legislation with revision in order to ensure the existing integrity and security of the National DNA Database System is maintained, to authorize the FBI as the federal law enforcement agency tasked with oversight of CODIS and establishing forensic DNA quality assurance standards, and include a definition of rapid DNA analysis and instruments utilizing Disapproved analytical platforms, chemistries, and expert interpretation systems. As we reviewed HR 320, we had concerns with some of the definitions, the practical implementation of blind proficiency testing, and the protection of confidential information within the database. ASCLD and CFSO stand ready to aid in moving the legislation forward once modified for the universal adoption of this technology. In closing, Mr. Chairman, we encourage the development of partnerships between law enforcement agencies, crime laboratories, and regulatory agencies for a careful and well-thought-out approach to the implementation of this promising technology. We believe that a methodical and measured approach to its deployment is vital to the criminal justice system in order to deliver the best forensic science possible. Again, I thank the committee for its time today, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Alexenko.
Thank you, Chairman Sensenbrenner, Ranking Member Jackson Lee, and members of the committee. I cannot tell you how honored and humbled I am to be here today before you speaking and sharing my testimony. I'm here, of course, representing myself, but I also bring with me the strength and determination of so many survivors of sexual assault who are aware I am here speaking before you today. And we all ask the same thing, and that is, please use our cases as a cautionary tale so that we can end this violence, and to use anything that we can to make our country a safer place. I'm a survivor of sexual assault. At 20 years old, I was raped, robbed, and sodomized at gunpoint by an unknown assailant. It was devastating. Not only did it devastate me, but it changed my life forever. It affected my mother, the individuals that lived in my apartment building, my future friends. It basically completely altered the course of my life. I submitted to a rape kit test, which is basically a very invasive gynecological exam. I knew that it was my duty as a citizen to aid law enforcement in any way that I could to put this perpetrator behind bars. Unbeknownst to me, my rape kit sat collecting dust for 9.5 years, along with 17,000 other rape kits in New York City. And we know now this is just the tip of the iceberg, certainly a situation that's occurring throughout the nation. But what happened in the nearly 15 years before the man that raped and robbed me, Victor Rondon, was caught, when his profile was finally, after nearly 15 years, uploaded to CODIS, and a match was made to the DNA in my rape kit. This man was a mobile serial predator. He committed a variety of crimes. He wasn't a specialist. He didn't stick to sexual assault. He was a burden on law enforcement, on human dignity. He was a burden on taxpayers, all because we did not catch him in time. And essentially, the story remains true for the same of all my other survivors that I know, and that is criminals are exploiting us in more ways than one. And serial predators move to avoid using our time delay as a weakness. They're using our time delay to get away with things. Victor Rondon committed crimes in 8 different states across this country and created a host of victims in his wake. And he is currently behind bars thanks to the dedication of law enforcement, and I'm proud to have been the complaining witness and testify against him. But I will let you know that after all those years, even 15 years later, the first time I saw Victor Rondon in all that time, I fainted at the sight of him, because to a survivor, time has many meanings. It stands still in one way, and 30 days can seem like a very long time. I feel like public safety should always take priority. I feel that we have a way to eliminate a lot of the crimes that are occurring. I feel, again, that if you don't take my tale as a cautionary tale, then it was all for nothing. It's so important for me to share my story. It's not easy. It's not easy to stand here and talk about the fact that I was raped, robbed, and sodomized. Not a story that I enjoy telling, but if it helps take one perpetrator off the street, then it's certainly worth it. Now, of course, I'm not a law enforcement professional, I'm not a scientist, and I do not possess a law degree, and I cannot speak specifically to the language in these provisions. But what I can tell you as a survivor is DNA testing is essential, and that time matters. For nearly 15 years, I was on a constant state of high alert, knowing that this violent criminal was walking the streets. And I have to tell you that I faced a lot of guilt, thinking that I didn't 100% do my part for the citizens of this country to find this perpetrator and put him away. Today I'm here to talk about the other side of the DNA database system and crucial new technologies that may reduce the amount of time needed to bring answers to victims of crime and safety to the citizens of this country. I hope that you will take this seriously. I have complete faith in the FBI, and I know that their testing methodology is stringent. We have to respect this technology, but it's important to implement methods that will no longer delay justice. I thank you for your time, and once again, I am very honored to be here today.
Thank you for your very moving testimony. We will now have questioning of the witnesses under the 5-minute rule. The chair will withhold his questions to see if we have time at the end. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte, is recognized first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing and for introducing H.R. 320, the Rapid DNA Act. I'll submit my opening statement for the record as requested, but I do want the witnesses and the other participants in this hearing to know how important I think it is that we address this issue. Ms. Wolf, let me start with you. Can you speak about the average turnaround time in your office for DNA identification samples versus forensic samples, including how long does each sample take to actually analyze? And do you know what those numbers are like on a national basis?
Thank you, Mr. Goodlatte. That's a very interesting question that you've proposed, and it's one that we deliberate over at great length in the forensic science community, and many of our members participate in the foresight study I mentioned in my opening remarks, where we partner with a West Virginia university to look at those very issues. Within the Phoenix Police Department laboratory, we're not a databasing laboratory, which is responsible for analyzing arrestee or offender samples. And so that's a different question than comparing it to the analysis of forensic samples. And so I'll answer your question in a general nature for the technology that we have available for databasing. And typically the platform that we use is called an ABI 3500 XL, which has the capability of processing 24 samples in one injection. If you use a direct amplification kit, which allows us to increase the efficiency or allows us to speed up the timeline in which we can process those database samples or reference standards, that run of 24 samples takes about 45 minutes. The data has to be taken off the system, and if you're utilizing an expert interpretation software system, then you can create a review of those profiles and create an entry into the CODIS database. So if we look at a comparison between the technology of rapid DNA to existing functionality of systems that are already in disapproved, an ABI 3500 has the capability in a full run to run about 90 samples, and then you add on controls and standards. That would take about 7 to 8 hours utilizing direct amplification, review using an expert system software.
I'm going to cut you short.
Certainly.
Would this legislation help speed this up a lot?
Well, comparing 90 samples utilizing rapid DNA would take almost 27 hours. Processing it using a traditional existing technology would take 7 to 8 hours. So the limitation with the rapid DNA is that you can only run 5 samples at a time, whereas on a current technology, we can run 24 samples at a time. To process 90 samples utilizing rapid would take 27 hours. Using existing technology would take 7 to 8.
So
Same result.
do you think that this is a good thing for people to have the option here or not?
It depends on your goal. The advantage that rapid DNA has is that you have that answer while the person is still in the booking station. With traditional databasing, there's a delay because you have to transport the sample from point of collection to a laboratory for analysis.
Okay, let me interrupt, and I have a couple of questions for Ms. Hess and Ms. Alexenko. Ms. Hess, is this bill likely to change the amount of DNA testing going on, or just the speed and source of that testing?
Yes, sir. Actually, right now we see the efficiencies in the speed of the testing, not in the amount. The amount of testing clearly depends on how the states have enacted laws as to whether they are drawing from convicted offenders or arrestees, individuals charged or not charged with crimes but arrested. So the amount doesn't change, but the speed will.
And Ms. Alexenko, it is good to see you again, and I'm very pleased that you keep coming back to this committee to stand up for this very important thing. And you were very helpful to us with the Debbie Smith reauthorization, and I'm glad to have you back here today as well. From your perspective, are we making progress on the rape kit backlog problem?
You know, I really have come to a recent moment of clarity, and really the rape kit backlog is really a symptom of a bigger disease. And certainly we're making progress. There has just been so much, the reauthorization of Debbie Smith, the $41 million. I mean, it is amazing the commitment our leaders are showing with different legislation. We still have a long way to go. I think that there a lot more understanding needs to be made on criminals, on how important it is to get these rape kits tested. And I think it really needs a shift, a paradigm shift in the understanding of the necessity of this technology.
Well, thank you, and I hope that you keep working with us so we can see that shift take place. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Conyers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to begin by thanking my colleague Sheila Jackson Lee for having a moment of silence in connection with the tragedy that just occurred, and I'm grateful to her for that. And this is an amazing set of witnesses here. And I'm trying to determine after the few responses that have been given so far whether we're moving ahead or just merely providing options. And I think I'll start with Ms. Wolf. What is your view that is this just something we've got to find out if it works better and is more efficient, and that we're at a preliminary stage of development where we're not really sure yet?
It's very early on in the testing phase. We have commercial products that are available for evaluation, and many of our members are currently looking at them. One of our members that probably has the most mature program is from the Arizona Department of Public Safety, and they began working with a program in 2013 and developed 2 different types of initiatives, one with an officer field testing program and another to test arresting offender samples within their laboratory. They were able to successfully validate the program, and it is operational currently. The spectrum, however, is wide, and we have other members that are currently in the process of trying to complete a validation study in which they have experienced challenges in the completion of those studies. And some of the issues that they've found with the technology are unacceptable failure rates and precision concerns. That they are working very closely with the vendors to overcome those challenges and expect to be successful in completing the validation studies. We fully expect that the technology is promising, has full potential, and will continue to improve so that it can be fully operational and provide the best assistance to the criminal justice system as possible.
So it's a good beginning we're off to. Ms. Alexenko, your testimony, of course, is gripping whenever it's given by yourself. What do you think right now, candidly, about the rapid DNA testing? Do you have hopes for it, or you have some secret reservations about it? Please tell us.
Certainly, I think that it's a step in a good direction. I don't necessarily think that this is going to solve the rape kit backlog per se, but as was mentioned earlier, I mean, we have an opportunity to quickly identify an offender's DNA very quickly. And I think that is so important. You know, in my case, it took 15 years for someone to upload my perpetrator's DNA. Rapid gives us the ability, as they are housed, to immediately, as was mentioned earlier, instead of going to a laboratory, you get that result immediately up into CODIS and see if there's a match.
Thank
so
you.
I think it's important.
Thank you so much. Ms. Hess, with your background with the FBI, where do you think the future lies, and what does it have in store for us with the rapid DNA machines?
Yes, sir. I would say that this has tremendous potential, and certainly from the perspective of being able to take this technology and take it out of the laboratory into a booking station. But with that comes a lot of responsibility, as was previously outlined, so that any officer would be able to use this equipment to the standards that are currently implied by the forensic laboratories.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thank you all. I think this is an important hearing, and I will look forward to seeing some improvement in this. I presume DNA machines are admissible as evidence in criminal trials. Is there any question about that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Do you agree that rapid DNA machines can be used as evidence in criminal trials?
Currently, as used in forensic laboratories with the human intervention, that would be the case. However, they are not yet mature enough to be used independently without that human intervention. But that is the goal.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. I've noticed that we are in for at least 2 votes on the floor, which should last 45 minutes. Let me inquire if anybody wishes to come back and ask questions after the votes are over with, which would probably be around 11:30.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
Chairman.
I get them in now, if that's okay.
Pardon?
Couldn't we get our questions in before we leave, Mr. Chairman?
If you are quick, because I would like to leave by the time of the second bell, and the gentlewoman from Texas wants to do it as well.
Okay, I'll try to be quick.
Okay, gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. I would like to reiterate the comments of my colleague, distinguished colleague from Michigan, that we thank Ms. Jackson Lee for offering a moment of silence, a horrific event that took place. Although I wasn't here for the moment of silence, I appreciate that. I'd like to express that. Ms. Hess, is there currently a number of total outstanding rape kits nationally, approximate? And if so, do you know what the number is?
Is he still back there?
Yes, sir. So as was previously mentioned, there are thousands of backlogged sexual assault kits across the nation.
Thousands, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, is there that's a pretty vague number, really. Is there, I think, you just got a sheet there?
We don't know the exact number at this time.
Okay,
I
that's
can
fine.
get that information.
Is there a state-by-state breakdown that's available? If you don't have it, is there somewhere we could get access to something like that? Like, I'd like to know what Ohio is, since that's my state.
I believe we could get that information.
Okay, if we could get that, that'd be wonderful.
Without objection, it will be included in the record.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Ms. Wolf, you mentioned in your testimony that several of your members are currently participating in pilot programs and validation studies to develop best practices for the widespread deployment of these systems. Could you share briefly any progress that you've reached at this point? And again, kind of brief, because I'm trying to...
Certainly. Our membership, as I mentioned during my opening remarks, was not only involved in the development of the technology, but is currently working to evaluate how well it can work in an operational setting. And so, as I mentioned, one of the most mature programs that our members are working on is out of the Arizona Department of Public Safety's program that they began working on in 2013. They've completed a validation study of the instrumentation and have initiated 2 different types of programs. One is with a field officer testing program, and another is with processing, arresting offender samples within a crime laboratory setting, including that human intervention part of it before the profiles are uploaded to CODIS. Okay. We have other members that have been working on it since 2014. The California Department of Justice is currently working to complete their validation study of their programs. They have encountered some challenges. They do anticipate overcoming those challenges, but again, those challenges go back to unacceptable failure rates of the runs and as well as precision concerns during the allele calls.
Okay, if I can cut you off there. Thank you, I appreciate that, because I wanted to, trying to be quick. Mrs. Alexenko, thank you for your bravery in stepping forth on this issue and trying to help others that may be in similar circumstances. So thank you very much for that. How did you learn that the rape kit was sitting there untested for 9.5 years?
Well, certainly I think things are different now, but I didn't discover until 2003, and I just frankly didn't understand it. I was running under the assumption that, of course, my rape kit was tested. I didn't think it would be.
Who told you? I mean, how did you learn?
The prosecutor in the Manhattan County Attorney's Office called me and told me, we're testing your kit.
And how long was that after the event itself?
It was 9.5 years.
9.5 years?
So we basically, to stop the clock on the statute of limitations, we had to do a John Doe indictment on the DNA.
Was this criminal, was he ever in custody during that period of time?
Many times. Okay. Many times for 9.5, yes.
So logically, if they had tested it, they had him in custody, perhaps.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlewoman from Texas.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your courtesies, and to the witnesses, let me thank you. I think this is powerful testimony for the importance of what we're trying to do. And Ms. Alsenko, let me thank you for being a friend in your time of need, and that is very important because there's so many that have the needs that you're expressing, but they cannot come. So let me thank you very much. Let me quickly go to Ms. Hess. And I'm going to put into the record again, as of 2013, Texas officials estimated there to be 20,000 untested kits statewide. Out of the 20,000 untested kits, 6,663 were in greater Houston area. We got a $4.4 million federal grant that I worked with the city to get. And now, as of February of this year, Houston completed testing all 6,663. I venture to say many had been sitting there for a long time. So I want to go to Ms. Hess. As I understand the legislation, it is to integrate this rapid DNA testing into the system to possibly allow that technology to be used overall so that labs can spend their time moving forward on the violent murders and the rape and other elements. Does that fit partly in your understanding?
Ma'am, I'd like to qualify that first by saying that, as has been stated here, we're really focusing on known samples, on reference samples.
Right.
Samples
Ms. Hess,
from
would you
arrest-
pull the microphone a little closer to
Yes.
you and make sure it's turned on?
So we're focusing on arrestees. We're focusing on reference samples, as opposed to crime scene or sexual assault kit.
Right. Let me just, with the rapid DNA technology, you're saying you're focusing on arrest situations. Is that what I understand?
That's correct.
And that's what I'm saying. You're focusing on arrests and other needs for DNA. The lab then can move forward on testing these rape kits and murder, and that's what I'm trying to understand from you. Is that?
Yes, ma'am, I understand. The vision is that once these kits, these instruments
Right.
are ready to be deployed in booking stations, that will greatly reduce the time and the resources needed to devote laboratory time toward the processing of arrestee or reference samples. So those resources might eventually be used or diverted in the laboratories to address the crime scene type of a forensic sample.
That's what I was trying to clarify for this bill. And just one last thing, can you, the FBI quality assurance, you believe that you can have that quality assurance for this new technology?
The quality assurance standards
Yes.
for the known or reference samples, yes.
Under this rapid DNA testing, you could have in place those quality standards.
Yes, we currently do have actually quality assurance standards. An addendum actually was in place since December for the laboratory, accredited laboratory environment. And yes, that would be our goal for reference samples, correct.
Thank you so very much. Let me finish my last two questions. And to Ms. Hinko, what should be the goal in terms of the time for analyzing sexual assault kits? And what more can we do? 9.5 years, it's unspeakable, but what should we be looking to?
Well, at present, we've been saying 30 days, within 30 days. But to be frank with you, it's been way too long that we've been saying 30 days. I really feel the turnaround time needs to be expedited. It's too long to wait. A criminal can certainly flee the area, flee the state, and in some cases, if they go from one state to another, they may as well have gone to another country. There's that little communication between the states. So, the sooner the better. I would like to see an ideal world. I don't know if everyone will agree with me, where it's like a quick turnaround time, one day.
Thank you.
Why not?
We listen to you very keenly. Ms. Wolf, let me thank you for your expertise. And so this is just a simple question. You gave us the hours, but I just want to hear from you as a professional that if time could be spent on the violent, the sexual predators and others, and this system can work, would you as a lab professional be willing to have that system in place?
You ask a very good question, Ms. Jackson-Lee, and it's an interesting answer because not all accredited laboratories, while they may participate in CODIS, process known standards from arrestees and offenders. Those are databasing laboratories. And in particular, my laboratory does not. And so the utilization of rapid DNA, while it would aid investigative information and help further investigations, it would not increase capacity for my laboratory. My laboratory is solely dedicated to processing casework and forensic samples, crime scene samples, and so while there is value in the technology, it certainly would not increase capacity within my laboratory.
Let me thank you very much. You've given us factual information. We know that it would help in many instances. The way your lab is framed, it would continue to do its work as it is, but it could help in other areas. Is that my understanding of your statement?
It can certainly provide information that can further investigations very quickly by providing that information while the individual is still in custody. And so it has value. The issue is very complex, and so there are multiple facets that need to be addressed. And really what we're looking for is to be able to increase capacity both during the booking process as well as on the analytical side in the laboratories that are processing casework samples.
With that, Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much to the witnesses. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I want to thank the gentlewoman for her very active interest in this matter, and I want to assure all the witnesses that we are very dedicated to searching for the right answers for how to get accurate information as quickly as possible and to work through these backlogs as well, but not to delay getting action on new cases as they come in. So having a system where state and local law enforcement and federal law enforcement are enabled to do both is what our goal is, and if you'll work with us, we would like to move ahead. So thank you all for testifying today.
Mr. Chairman, would you yield for a moment? I just want to put a sentence on the record. I have been working on a bill dealing with the DNA focusing of those who perpetrate violent acts against children. And I hope that we will continue the discussion with Mr. Sensenbrenner with this Judiciary Committee. This may be a vehicle where we can combine some of that interest because there's some data talking about how many times a day a child is sexually violated and or treated, subjected to a violent crime. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentlewoman. That concludes today's hearing, and I thank all the witnesses for coming. I know some of you came a long way. And without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional written questions for the witnesses or additional materials for the record, and this hearing is adjourned.